some of you may not know who Mike Serbinis is, but I'm certainly going to introduce him shortly. But he's my new special friend of a year, and I should have met him 10 years ago because he's brilliantly amazing. So you will know that. You shouldn't be coming here to see me because one day you're going to say, I remember the day when I heard Mike Serbinis talk at some doctor's book event. That's what's going to happen.
With his special friend?
Yeah, with a special friend. So we have a very eclectic group that's going to be joining us. Some of you are already here. Some people have chosen not to be inspired by us. I don't understand why. Yes, and the reason is that we have decided that we're going to bring in allied health professionals, meaning doctors, naturopathic doctors, massage therapists, chiropractors, holistic nutritionists, mindfulness, and it goes on and on. And then there's a group that's from Telus that's going to be coming here, and as well, I have some wonderful clients who've joined us today, and certainly our friends. So we're going to practice what we preach, which is to have holistic care. So thank you for coming. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a couple of things for the chat. The first one is we hope that we're going to be able to share with you our vision for healthcare, and we know that some people couldn't make it, so we certainly are taping it so that people can see it afterwards if they couldn't come today or didn't want to deal with the traffic. And then we're going to talk about the importance of wellness and the vision for that. I'd like to have Mike's insight about the importance of people and the allied health professional working together, and there's a whole bunch of people that are involved in that space as well, which is really important. And then certainly, I guess I should tell you a little bit why I wrote the book. That would be fun. And then to give a teaser out, we're going to give out a whole lot of prizes, including $1,800 programs. So we're going to be able to do that. So, all right. We'll get some more people in here. So I'm going to now welcome Mike. So like I said to you, you're going to know more about him than about me in the future. So there are 4 words that come to mind, and when I say them, they won't link. First one is rocket scientist. Second one is genius. Third one is change agent. And the fourth one is Canadian. So now I say that because Mike has made a decision that after a period of time in Silicon Valley, that he's going to come back and build and be a lead in what they call Silicon Valley North. Is that what your goal is?
Something like that.
Okay.
We'll talk more about it.
So, so I want him to brag a whole lot about what he's doing. So most of you know about Kobo. How many of you have a Kobo reader? All right. You need to thank him because there is now over 20 million users in 190 countries. And it was founded in 2009 as part of a division of Indigo with Heather Reisman. And then I guess you got bored of it, or she got bored of it, and sold it to a Japanese company for some round number like 300 million. And then just want to tell you what he did before that. So he and his buddy Elon Musk built one of the first internet search engines, which was later sold to a division of Compaq for a nice round number like 300 million.
300 million.
Yeah, it's a nice round number. But I don't want you to sell your next company 300 million because it's worth way more than that.
Okay.
Ken is sitting in the front, who's another tech guru, who said it's worth billions of dollars. So I'm going to, I can make a mess of what League is, but I think I'm going to get you to tell the folks a little bit about League because you've come to Canada, found it. So tell them what it is about today, what League is.
So thanks for that really kind intro. I feel like I should be introing you as well. But a little bit about League. So as Elaine said, I was in the book business, selling books to people in 190 countries and 77 different languages. And while I was doing that, I kind of got inspired by health and what was going to change in the world of healthcare. this idea that there would be a ton of data that we can leverage about ourselves based on wearable devices, and that we could use that data to actually make better use of healthcare services and actually be more preventative. So I'll talk more about the vision later, but essentially what we set out to build is something that connects people with healthcare providers so that they can have personalized healthcare and more preventative care. So an easy way to think about it is if you've used Uber today, League looks a lot like Uber for healthcare. So you can open up the app on your mobile phone and very quickly discover healthcare providers, choose your category, and within about 10 seconds find one that's near you, that's highly rated, and find a time slot that works for your schedule, book an appointment, and we handle everything else, payment, insurance. That's partly why we're working with Telus. And we allow you to stay in touch with those health professionals in a secure electronic way right through the League app. So we do a lot more, but in a nutshell, that's it.
Great, thank you.
So moving right along, I got this really nice intro, and the rocket science thing is kind of hard to shake. It's like the story that my mom keeps telling, but everybody else, including Ken, our dear friend, also talks about it. I thought it'd be appropriate to tell everyone a little bit about you, Elaine, also a superstar in the world of health and medicine, trained right here in Toronto at our one of the biggest and best medical schools in the world. On staff after that at UHN and Trillium Health, and then you became a big fancy medical director at BMO Nesbitt Burns, and went on to start the Executive Healthcare Center, write a book, and of course be Chief Wellness Officer here at Telus. I find it funny that the rocket science reference comes up because I had heard about Elaine when I was telling people this whole future of health thing was interesting to me. There, people were like, "Oh, you have to meet Elaine Chin. She's awesome." And where we met, I sit on the board of something called the Perimeter Institute, which is now the best place for theoretical physics in the world. And Mike Lazaridis kind of had that brain. He was the sort of father of it. He had that brainchild to create that in Waterloo. And Elaine and I were both at an event where we were talking about. Where it was Mike actually talking about perimeter and the future of theoretical physics. Anyways, so we're not here to talk about theoretical physics. We're here to talk about health and the future of it. I think it would be handy for everybody to know a little bit more about what EHC does and what you do there.
Well, thank you. So some of our clients certainly experience it. So the clinic's been around for a little bit over 10 years, and we have a very simple purpose, is to keep people healthy so that they can stay at peak health. And we do that by making sure that we're integrating the latest in medical science so that we can in fact try to predict the onset of disease, manage it appropriately, early detection, and the other important part is to make sure we stay at peak performance by optimizing your nutrients and your hormones, and to make it eat properly and sleep enough and exercise. Certainly maybe some of those boring things, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And I think the reason why we brought these two groups together is something that our clients value, which is the holistic approach to healthcare, which we pride ourselves, which a lot of people think is really important, it's overdue. So when a client comes in to review their results, we have a system where we have both the medical doctor and a naturopathic doctor working together. And we've also brought on now a nutritionist. And along with that team, we include massage therapists, chiropractors, cognitive behavioral therapists, mindfulness people, so that we can certainly keep you healthy.
I went through it.
Yes, so just for the
amazed.
record, Mike is a thoroughbred. And he's perfect. Well, at least after we got our hands on him. So he's awesome.
If I can interrupt, I mean, I was blown away. I was invited by Elaine to go through the program, and I thought, okay, well, she seems nice enough. I'll, and it's not that far from where I live.
I didn't give you a chance to say no, right?
No, that's true. That's true. So I went and I checked it out, and there was this, there's in a very short span of time, a bunch of testing that was done, and what came after was what blew me away. And what I say to you, I wish I knew what I learned as a part of the Health Action Plan. I kind of wish I knew that information 20 years ago.
Well, now that you have the information, what I'm hoping that you can do with me is to deliver more of what we do at the clinic to the masses. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So we're thrilled about that opportunity. So, you know what I want to do? I know we're going to talk about that. So when we met, we sat down afterwards for lunch, and you told me this fascinating story. How many people know of a gentleman named Dr. Patrick Shunshang? So we'll talk a little bit about him, and I want you to share the story. In fact, he'll be generous about it, but in fact, he said, now this gentleman's really brilliant too, and he said, well, I think he got it wrong. I figured out how to get it right, so I'm going to show it to him. So that's part of League, but can you share with us a little bit also about the healthcare landscape and how you see it and where the opportunities around technology lies?
Yep. So, you know, it was about a year and a half ago, and I found myself in Los Angeles, and how I got there, I almost didn't make it because I was in Johannesburg and I had to get through Frankfurt, and there was this crazy strike, and if it wasn't for these Navy SEALs dragging me through this sort of, I'm not joking, it was very scary, 10,000 people stuck in this one part of Frankfurt airport, I don't think I would have made it. But anyways, I made it a day late to LA, and it was an event that was organized for a group of CEOs. And I was there with my wife, and again, I arrived a day late, so I was not the popular person that weekend, but I went right to the first event of the weekend, and it was an event at the LA Children's Hospital, and it was former President Bill Clinton and Dr. Patrick, who I just think of him now because I of course did some research on him afterwards, and he has this auspicious title of the richest doctor who ever lived, you know, who has really made his career on discovering different approaches to delivering, in most cases, existing pharmaceuticals to really deliver targeted treatment, personalized treatment, in his case, in cancer. And so what Dr. Patrick was talking about was this future of medicine. And he was talking about a future of medicine that was more personalized and more preventative and more, you know, data-centric to deliver more personalized approaches. And I mean, this guy was incredibly compelling. I mean, Bill Clinton is very charming, but Patrick kind of had him, I would say. And he started to, you know, go through how this would play out. And he described a company that he was building, but other people that were also building out this kind of platform. And then he got to a slide, and this was a very small room. There was about a dozen of us, and you know, a screen behind him. And he got to a slide where he talked about, where he was showing what would have to change in the world across hospitals and pharmaceutical companies, local healthcare providers, to really enable the vision that he imagined. And that's where he lost me, because that's where I felt like it looked, for any people from a technology background, it looked like the 1,000-year IT project. You know, the project that just would never ever come to fruition. Maybe like, you know, some of the projects our government has done in healthcare, but that's another story. And you know, I asked him, I said, so I'm curious why you're kind of going about it top down. Why not from the consumer kind of bottoms up? And he said, well, listen, you know, I think that sounds fascinating. I think that will happen too. This idea of a consumer or future of healthcare, of helping people stay healthy every day, using some of the same techniques, leveraging data, leveraging some of the testing that is now affordable to create a profile for you, a genetic profile and otherwise. It's totally possible. I'm just not a consumer guy. And that's where he left it. And I literally like excused myself from this little room, went outside, my iPhone had just died, and I needed to find some paper to write down what I was thinking about. So the only paper that I could find was unfortunately in the bathroom, the restroom, and I wrote down these notes about what I thought we could build here, which was this idea of enabling a future of preventative care, a future of healthcare that was consumer-centric, personalized, and really took a lot of those ideas that Dr. Patrick and I'm sure a lot of other incredibly smart researchers around the world were working on, and really putting them into an easy-to-use kind of simple experience that any consumer could leverage. So that's kind of how I got onto this whole thing. And what's interesting is, as I started to get into it, I realized, a lot of signs all pointing in the same direction. 99% of healthcare spend is more sick care than preventative care. We've got a system that, 12% of GDP, or 11 to 12 here, growing, 17% in the US, growing, a runaway train kind of heading for a mountainside, not sustainable, with both boomers and chronic disease hitting the system. There's got to be a change, and it's felt like a real system change, and the kind of change that if you try to fix it top down and try to move all these government big moving parts, feels like it's never going to happen. So it's the kind of change that attracts someone like me and gets me to meet people like Elaine and do talks like this. And throughout the process, everybody tells you sounds very clever, but you're totally foolish. Clever and foolish, I'm excited about. That's like a sign. I remember with books, people at Kobo told us, like 9 days before we launched, you're wasting your time. The CEOs of the big 5 publishers said, you're wasting your time. Books are never going to go digital. They're 1% of 1% of sales. In 90 days, they grew to 10% of sales. So clearly those CEOs didn't know what the hell they were talking about, because it changes that rapidly. And I think the same thing can happen here. So anyways, that's a little bit about that part of the story of meeting Dr. Patrick.
Did you frame the piece of toilet paper?
Well, I went back and he said, you went to write that down, didn't you? And I said, yeah. And he's like, who are you? And I said, I'm just some guy from Canada. And this other guy that I met, who we call Monaco, is a Canadian. Tony Toriani lives in Monaco, runs like billions of dollars or something, who knew President Clinton, and Patrick knew a bit about my background, and he was like, you got to get a piece of what he just wrote down, because he's probably going to go start a company that does exactly this. So anyway, so that was that story, and there's more to it, but we're here not to talk just about that. Meanwhile, you've been building this big wellness practice here at Telus, and it has a lot of the same themes. In fact, I kind of look to you because when I went through the program at EHC, I thought, this is exactly what we need to do, but just at bigger scale with technology. And I think you've already started doing some of that here and bringing it to corporates with Telus.
So I'm really glad that Telus is working with Mike and League. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's been an immense privilege and pleasure to be at Telus as the Chief Wellness Officer. It's certainly something Darren Entwistle, our President CEO, wanted to happen, to just put a stake in the ground to say wellness is really an important endeavor at Telus. So I decided to join the team for a number of reasons, and I'll give you some highlights. But one of the things that has struck me and why I started Executive Health Center is, I know you've done the big picture numbers, and I'm going to give you the smaller picture numbers. So if you could look at somebody to your right and to your left, from a statistical point of view, 1 in 3 of you, one of you is going to develop diabetes or pre-diabetes in the next 5 years. Now, you could argue that this population sitting here is a little healthier and we're talking to the converted, but I hope that the converted here is going to help us with this vision. And another one that I really like is in 10 years, half this room is going to be diagnosed with obesity. Kind of scary thoughts. 2 in 5 of us will develop cancer in our lifetime, and 1 in 4 of us will die from it. And the last one I want to talk about is when this talk is finished, 20 new Canadians will be diagnosed with diabetes, and 7 or 8 people would have died from a heart attack or stroke across Canada. Those are real numbers, and I only have one solution, is to prevent it from happening in the first place. So we have to do something different. We have to practice wellness, and I joke about it, but I really say that we need to stay healthy until one day our genetic material says, time to expire, and we find ourselves in heaven dead and go, oh, that was it, okay? But in the meantime, I don't want the other stuff to happen where we have to be stuck in a nursing home with bed sores. I'm not going there. Are you?
I'm not going.
So there are a number of clients here that I have to say thank you to for a lot of reasons, but many of you who are here have prompted me for a number of years to say, so you figured out the secret sauce around wellness, because we've figured out the scientific technology. Now, how the hell are you going to do this for me so that I can give it to our employees and our families at a more affordable level, or to our customers that we look after? So I'd have to say that in the last 5 years, I have become very humbled by what engineers do. Trying to develop a app of some sort in my own clinic was very humbling. So what I did learn and figured out was to create a program with some steps involved that finally, when I did come into Telus, they were kind enough, and we had a discussion that I ended up licensing a platform concept to them. And I'm just going to tell you very quickly, and we've branded it and we called it as a self-health. And it is what you would call a wellness enterprise engagement model with API technology, so that you can connect to your wearable devices to understand and download data, which includes your steps, your sleep, the levels of intensity of activity. And API just means that you can go beyond a Fitbit. We can bring down maybe other devices in the near future. But the other exciting thing that I hope will happen soon, and there's other partners called the LifeLab team that are here as well, so that we can download blood work data that you can in fact track. So it's dealing on the trend that people are actually interested in self-quantification. So now that you can track your numbers, now what do you do with it? So it's really important to be able to have a team of health professionals, and they don't need to be $200, $300 doctors, and they don't need to be $60, $70, $80 nurses. Not that they're not qualified, they may be a little overqualified. It may be not the best to do this. So we need to talk about people who can actually coach, which is wellness people, and Morneau Chappelle, which is our partners here, are for this project, are here today, and they did our coaching for us. But my dream is to have the other allied health professionals be able to see your data and be able to have a conversation with you and coach you and develop a health action plan. And then the last piece is what we call stay engaged, and we've been working with a company called Sprout, and the team at Sprout are here. And it's a social gamification model, so that you can challenge yourself with your friends and family and colleagues to say, hey, you know what? We're going to do 10,000 steps today. I see on the dashboard you've only done 3. Let's go out for lunch for a walk. So I think we need to have some fun in wellness, but also do some steady tracking and those kinds of things. So the other question that people ask me, why Telus? Because for a long period of time, I must say, I was a family member at Rogers, and you'll understand why shortly. I'll explain. But Telus is in a unique spot because they've made an investment and decision that they're going to be in the healthcare space. And many of you don't know that, for example, the EMRs, or the electronic medical records, which doctors have in their offices, 60% of the marketplace is owned by Telus, with those doctors who are using EMRs. We started a product called PharmaSpace, which helps people through the doctors to connect to their pharmacists, so that we can do automatic renewals without having to call people and fax people, which is, whoa, that's really an advancement, isn't it? But it's important. And last but not least, to be able to integrate something so that one day you can be looking at your medical files from your hospital directly on your phone. So that's why I'm here to try to pull that together. And so So why don't you talk a little bit about how Telus and League is now involved, because the piece that Mike has is the consumer market, and Mike's been working with the consumer health team and also payment solution team. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So I would say normally at this stage of any startup, working with a big telco is not what you do. That would not be in the playbook for success. Working with Telus, though, to be quite honest, a lot of it doesn't feel anything like that. Obviously, Telus has a substantial health business that has a number of different moving parts. But I think just from a brand standpoint and a value standpoint, I think that's in some of the relationships with yourself, with Dave Fuller, Drazen, and the consumer health team. It really drew us to working together. And so there's a number of touch points, and that's also something that is not in the playbook. You don't want to do too much, try to bite off more than you can chew. But we're working with the consumer health team about bringing the League solution to Telus and consumers. I would say so far that piece is really in the testing stage. We've done some early trials in the summer where consumers buying wearables at one of the Telus education centers or retail stores would get some League credit for healthcare services. We're also doing some work on the payment side, and so what's great about services like Uber is when you are arriving at your destination, you just walk out. You don't have to worry about paying. Well, that's exactly how League works. Of course, with your credit card. And when it comes to insurance, a lot of us that do have insurance know that it's a pain to file a claim. And so enabling that same Uber experience, not just for your Visa or Amex, but also for your insurance claims, is something that we're doing, and we're doing that with Telus, as Telus has the payments gateway for insurance e-claims here in Canada. So there's a bunch of other stuff we're talking about on the corporate side, and that's where actually so far, and in this early stage of a company, you tend to try a lot of different things that don't work, and I kind of call it the pit of despair. It sounds exciting that you're working on this new startup and it's all this newfangled technology, but a lot of stuff actually just does not work in the beginning, and it takes a while to figure out, to strike that vein and get some signal, get some energy that, wow, something might be working. And so we actually started to see that in August. And August is normally a dead month from a business standpoint. We grew about 6 times month over month. So those are good growth numbers, but off of a small base. Looks like we'll grow another 6 times this month, and we're projecting to kind of keep some of that going. So do that math. Even if you start with $1, you get to big dollars quickly if you can keep up that triple-digit month-over-month growth. What's driving it is we've been going around talking to, and League is a very local, you might say a hyper-local model, because people don't consume health services across the country or even across town. They kind of stick to where they live. And so we've been reaching out to employers in the neighborhoods where we have density and running health and wellness programming for them. And everybody says yes, and consumers sign up. It's a free massage or a free whatever health consultation, a free health coach, and people activate and discover how to work with us that way. And so that's a program that we're talking with Telus to be a part of, as the Telus SMB team reaches a lot of employers, and exactly the kind of employers that that we would be working with. So anyways, there's a lot of exciting things in the early stages of a new partnership, and I'm sure there will be other examples of how we work together, maybe on self-health. But we're here to talk about a book. So
I was having an interesting conversation.
I'm curious.
It's just a book. You're like going to build a $1 billion business. Do you think it's going to be a $1 billion book?
Yeah, well, books. I know a little bit about the book business. Nobody makes $1 billion unless it's a really naughty book. Those books make a lot of money.
Well, why don't you tell me that?
So there could have been some more pictures in there.
No.
Those books I would listen. Whenever you start one of those things, you have no idea, right? And so I didn't know much about books, and other than being a customer of them, and I thought the book business would be driven by, book club hosting moms in nice neighborhoods. It's not. It's like commuters that read buy 5 to 10 books a week. Usually very what we would call active romance. So anyways. And some guys reading science fiction, but that's not really part of it. So you wrote a book, and I read it today, just in time.
This is the genius part.
I never studied for stuff.
Can I tell you what you sent me as an email?
Sure.
You found a mistake. Where's all my publishers? It was a mathematical calculation error on some page, so I apologize.
I only caught it because it offended me. Because it was like 5'11". If you're 5'11" and 210, you're obese. And like I'm 6'1 and a half and 220. So like that for sure puts me in the obese category. And I did the math. I'm like, wait a second. So anyways. It's a small.
But he didn't send me an email and go, you were right. I need at least 7 hours sleep. Like sleeping 3-4 hours to build a company is not good for your telomeres.
Anyway, so what I find fascinating about this book, so actually it was Ken that first put me on to Elizabeth Blackburn, that won the Nobel Prize in 2009 for her work from like over a decade ago about telomerase. And this whole idea of the body having a built-in system to kind of replenish the ends of its chromosomes, and that those ends of the chromosomes, those shoelaces, the ends of the shoelaces are tied to our longevity, and that you could actually affect them by just doing simple things, not DNA engineering, but like going for a walk or meditating or eating well. And I really got onto the idea in particular because this was all right around the time that I was starting League. And as I was thinking about empowering people to be healthy every day, one of the things I thought about was just my dad. My dad is 81 years old now. He walks about 7 to 8 kilometers every day and then swims for a mile every day, which is like, if I can do that at 60, I will be thrilled. But those are the kinds of activities that you talk about that really help your telomeres and help you live longer. But I know there's also been controversy about like, is that all right, or is that kind of phony science? So I'm curious, why did you write the book, and tell us a little bit more about the science.
So some of you know that it's been about 25 years that I've been in practice, and about half of it I spent looking after sick people. And I realized somewhere along the way that doctors are actually the ones that facilitate people ending up in nursing homes and being disabled, because we did one thing wrong. We didn't spend enough time teaching people how to stay healthy. As I mentioned, prevention is the best cure. And then to add on to that is that I don't think we've leveraged enough of the science that is actually available now today that helps you understand what's happening with your body, how your body's ticking, what you need to do to change it to modify your genetics. So we certainly practice it every day in our clinic. We help people understand their body metabolism, their genetics, their nutrient toxic profiles, and their food intolerances. We bug them on sleep. We bug them on eating 3 meals a day. And then my critics come to me and go, what proof do you have that what you're doing with your team really works? That you're in fact going to move the needle from preventing people from getting sick and helping them stay healthier for a longer time. So really this is why I wrote the book, because telomeres won the Nobel Prize in 2009, so we're going to have to assume that we believe in the Nobel Prize. So if you don't, then don't listen to me anymore. So the telomeres won, so that means telomeres are real. And I'm going to tell you what telomeres are about in a moment. But I wrote the book because I just want to shatter the myth that wellness is voodoo. It isn't, because we can actually change the health outcomes by learning to live in a more wellness way. So let's talk about telomeres. So the book is full of brightly colored shoelaces, so I'm going to pull one up. And we were just talking about that. So your telomeres are like the tips of your shoelaces. The plastic bits, they're formerly called anklets. Did you know that? I didn't know that word beforehand.
Anklets?
Yeah. And anklets.
Okay.
And what we do is that your parents give you a certain length. So maybe you're more blessed or less blessed by the length. But the minute you're conceived, you start burning your telomeres. And that's because your cells, your chromosomes need to zip and unzip to create more proteins so that you can build up cells to build your organs and replenish you to make you nice and tall over 6 feet and be able to play volleyball.
And obese.
And you're not obese yet. We're going to keep you from not being
220.
obese. And what we want to be able to do is also keep you from getting sick. Now, if you do get sick, what will happen is your body has to repair itself, unzip the chromosome, rebuild some proteins. Now, it's not an issue. You've got lots to burn, so how quickly or slowly you burn your telomeres will actually depend on how you care about your life. And when you get to a critically short telomere length, this is when trouble happens and your chromosomes start to become unstable. And when they become unstable, then you don't replicate properly. And the analogy I use is like trying to photocopy while you're shaking the photocopier. So if you don't make a good photocopy of your DNA to make your proteins, then out of it comes the nucleus, and we're going to have to rely on our repair mechanisms. And when our repair mechanisms can't keep up, then this is when chronic disease starts to happen. And the diseases that are prominent in our society today are cancer, heart disease, complications of diabetes, dementia, arthritis, and to some extent they're all related to telomeres. So that's why I wrote the book. So to help people understand what is the possibilities and what the science is telling us, because if you do believe in telomeres, and there's a lot of published work around how you can change your lifestyle and all the things that are implicated that we educate people to do, are well written in journals to talk about how you can improve the length of your telomeres, then it should be logical that these things now do actually keep you from getting sick and helping you live longer and be well.
So, it sounded like a lot of science. I'm not a biologist,
No.
but as an engineer, I like to get things to a practical place. So I'm curious, how do you tie all this together in a simple way for all of us? And in particular, how do I make my telomeres longer?
Okay. So there's two parts. If you're an engineer, you got to assess the problem and fix it. So the first part to assessing the problem is certainly, let's do a baseline. So we're going to test your telomere length and see what quartile you're in, whether you're below or above the median or the mean. And then the other things that implicate your telomeres is about all your biochemistry, your hormones, your nutrients, and we measure all that. And then we go through it with you. And what's important is I don't know everything as a medical doctor, nor does a nutritionist everything as a nutritionist. So we work together with you. Now we're going to gang up 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and spend an hour to 2 hours going through your results and talking through how we will come up with a health action plan and then monitor you throughout this whole journey and keep you on track. So that's really how it's simple, but it's hard work. It's really hard work. It's easier to eat potato chips and French fries every day and drink 2 glasses of wine.
It is hard work. I did it, and I found the health action plan. Actually, I was amazed by the results. It was about an hour. That we
No,
took.
you actually mentioned the blood work did, yeah. And then you said we drained you, but really didn't. We refreshed your blood.
Yeah.
We recycled it, give you some new ones.
But I found the hour where we reviewed things to be like.
You were actually here for 2 hours, but it was okay.
Is that right?
You managed 2 hours.
I
Yeah.
asked a lot of questions. So it sounds awesome, and just from my experience doing it, I think everybody should do it. And I would hope that one day this just becomes so prevalent that everybody gets it done. In fact, all kids should have it done. We should know well in advance of some of our kids growing up that they may have certain predispositions that can be managed or can be put into their own personal health action plan. But as I think about all of this, I come back to this experience I had this summer. I was with a few people, a bunch of Canadian CEOs, and then tech CEOs, and we brought some people up from Silicon Valley. One of the guys we brought up was a guy named Salim Ismaili, who is the founder of Singularity University. Has anybody heard of Singularity University? So Salim he's Canadian, and he was talking about the future of health. We had some bank CEOs there and some insurance company CEOs, and there's this real issue that people used to retire at a certain age and live not much longer, and so the money in their savings and the investment sort of system, CPP, it all kind of worked. That doesn't really work anymore because in general people are living longer. And in fact, the thing that floored me at this event, where we had some pretty renowned people, is that right now the average amount that we're increasing longevity in North America is about 3 months per human life per year. But the expectation is in the next decade that we'll be adding almost a year to the average lifespan every year. That's not like, who knows who Ray Kurzweil is? That's not Ray Kurzweil crazy, and some people don't think he's crazy, but like Ray is popping all kinds of pills to live to 150. But we talked about this real possibility that the first 150-year-olds are already among us. It could be one of my kids.
It will be you.
It's not going to be me, but the thing that I'm inspired by all of it, because while maybe 150 is far out there or 200 is far out there, there's real science here, and leveraging it in a way that every consumer, any of us in the room, and probably our more consumer savvy kids or tech savvy kids could leverage. That's exciting to me. So I'm curious, how can League help bring this to not the 50 to 100 people here, but to 100 million people?
So I have this vision one day, which is now, because you're going to help me, bring this to the masses. And we're using the same model of saying, do testing and then doing coaching. This looks very complicated, doesn't it? This is the new technology. What does this look like to you?
Business card.
It's a piece of paper. And I can now send a kit to you with 2 of these pieces of paper. And the harder part is for you to just poke your finger as if you were diabetic and put a couple of drops of blood on this piece of paper. And I can actually theoretically measure almost everything. But from a practical purpose, I can measure your vitamin D, so I know how much you need. And I can measure your omega fatty acids. These are 2 very important nutrients for the health of your telomeres. And then the other thing I can do is ask you to literally pee on the paper, and with that wet pee, and dry it up and mail it back to me in this little case. This is a medical event. He's looking at me like I'm nuts. So we're both nuts, aren't we?
I'm just thinking it's going to be messy to pee on the paper, but I'm just being childish. Sorry.
I'm just thinking this through. It's easier for guys than girls. Okay, so I don't know how we got here.
Go.
Keep going. So when we have this kit, what we're going to do is ask you to mail it back to us, and we will be able to get your vitamin D levels, omega fatty acids, other nutrients, all your hormones, your stress response hormone, your cortisol, estrogens, progesterones, testosterones, melatonin. And then I just wish that we could do video conferencing, because you would have helped me download all this blood work, and you can see it, I can see it as your coach, and talk you through it and tell you what the next steps are, and to bring in a whole bunch of allied health professionals to keep you going. So you're telling me that in January you can make my dream come true. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
January?
pretty much.
Well, I want you to tell everybody because
Yeah.
I'm holding you to January.
So, I mean, the pieces of the platform of League that we've built so far include the marketplace, helping you discover, schedule, pay, claim insurance with your providers, messaging, there's a community aspect. We're just about to roll out the health action plan this week. So that's the starting point for your dialogue between you and your different health providers. But this idea of having a place where you and your team or a league of your own can connect, we essentially have that. Then connecting to various labs. We've been in talks with a number of them to plug right into the platform. So this idea that your personal health record does not sit in some government database or 100 government databases, it actually kind of sits with you. You control it, and that goes for your blood work and some of the markers that Elaine is talking about, connecting your wearables, and all of that so far on our platform is what we've got planned in the next few months. But then adding bigger, health clinics, because so far with League, it's a lot of independents and small clinics. That said, we're at the point where I guess as a whole, League would be the biggest health clinic in Toronto so far, but we're just getting started. But adding bigger health centers and health clinics and having direct connections into their systems, that's coming next as well. So
I'm going to put you on the spot. I have
yeah.
witnesses there. Can Executive Health Center be the first clinic on League?
Yeah, sure.
Did you hear that? That's exciting.
Of course you will be.
Okay, we heard it here first. So I'm excited. We've been talking for a little while, so we thought that if Alex can come up and give me a hand with the microphone, we can then see if there's any questions. We're going to take a few questions before we start to have a little eat and drink and celebrate. Anybody have a question?
So Elaine, I was with you from the beginning, from Beresford Clinic.
Thank you.
And I can vouch that I have been kept healthy with Elaine, and I will support her for her every move. I was at your pre-book launch a couple of years ago. How is this book different from that introduction?
Yes, thank you. So what Rita is talking about is I decided that it was fun to put a book on iTunes, and it was very much a video book. And it helped us get our storybook together so that then I had to sit down and put, as we say, fingers to keys and start pressing them. And I would say that this is the handbook for both pros and the health consumer in a very readable form. I made sure that my son, who's now 16, can read it and share it with his friends, and to be able to start at that age to stay well. So it is a very readable book, and I think there's a lot of concepts there that a lot of health pros also need to educate themselves on. So it's a two-way street. Thank you for asking. Thank you for your support all these years. Anybody else?
Hi, Elaine and Mike. Thanks so much. My name is Peter Burgess. I'm motivated, but I'm challenged with the Canadian mentality towards healthcare, primarily the public sector. Obviously, we're looking to entrepreneurs, our physicians, to try to change the system, but it's a public system, and Canadians are receiving healthcare for free given our political structure today. What can we do to obviously change status quo with our politicians, with our physicians, to try to move the meter away from reactive healthcare to proactive wellness?
Thanks for your question. I mentioned earlier, clever and foolish, I like. And I've gotten the comment that, doing this here is crazy because we have the system that we have, and it's run by our government, and the government pays doctors, and that's kind of how the money flows. I have a couple thoughts. One is, and this is kind of an entrepreneurial thing, I guess. When I look at a new space, one of the assessments I try to make early on is, do I believe that this is going to exist? Yes or no? And if I can get myself to yes, then it's just a question of, do I want it to be me or not? And that's kind of the first step. So with this, I made that assessment, like, this is going to exist. This is how we're going to interact. We will all have a personal health app or personal health plan, and that'll be how we interact with the system. The thing about technology is that there's only ever 3 guys that are on the podium, right? Any sector you can look at in technology, there's only 3 guys that ever make it to the end, and nobody ever remembers number 3. So Steve Podborski told me I should never use that joke, but who I met through Telus. And so I think this is happening whether we like it or not. And in my conversations with different parts of our government, both provincial here, I was in Quebec yesterday speaking to them, with the insurers. I actually think the insurers are going to want to drive the change, and they're probably the sort of financial muscle versus our democratic muscle. I don't think our democratic muscle is going to really make much of a dent. But I think the insurers all see it, the banks see it, that there needs to be change. And meanwhile, I think the real thing that's going to happen over the next 10 years, I'm 41, I have very little need for the today, knock on wood, for the medical part of our healthcare system. But I suspect in 10 years, statistically, I will likely need it to some degree. And what I know about the trend of spending and the projections, today in Ontario, it's 42 cents on the dollar, on the tax dollar, goes to healthcare. And you guys probably know the number better than I do, but I think it's about, the expectation is we get to 75 cents in 10 years. So either that's bad math, or it's we're shutting down education, because that's the only thing big enough to move money out of to pay for this change in health, or something's got to give. And understanding that things move slowly, I think what we'll start to see is that services increasingly will be delisted. And spending a lifetime, spending 50% of your earnings on tax, a lot of which goes to the provincial government, you're not going to be too happy at age 50 and 60 that half the services are missing, that you were getting for free or were available. So I think there's a lot of financial reasons why things will change, but in the meantime, technology will just move faster. And so for someone like me, I can't bet on Toronto, on Ontario, on Montreal, on Quebec, on Canada, because of my earlier comment about the podium. So I need to launch Seattle, New York, San Francisco, LA, Miami, Denver, Boston, Chicago in the next 7 to 8 months, because it's a race, and this will happen. And I would rather, outside of it being good for me and for my team, but I would rather it be a Canadian company that really is starting from a pretty amazing place with the system we have, warts and all, to be exporting a technology that becomes the basis for how we do healthcare in the future. So I don't have all the answers, but I think the economics will drive 3 companies to the podium, and they will be global companies. And so I will also have to launch in Brazil and Germany and India, 3 Wild West healthcare economies. And in the meantime, this increasing trend of delisting, we're just not going to be happy about it. And I think insurance companies will step in, and because we'll push on them, and they're going to be like, well, geez, I need to maintain my margins and my earnings, and so something's got to change. Long-winded answer.
Like Rita, I've been a client of Elaine's for many years, and I've also benefited from the. Hi, I'm Jerry. Like Rita, I've also been the patient of Elaine's for many years and have benefited from what Elaine does. And I've got a specific question for you. I mean, I love the analogy of Uber for healthcare. And you're right, we have to bend the cost curve because it's unsustainable. But, and this is, I'm not black hatting, so I want to qualify my question because I'm very excited about what you're doing. But, you know, one of the ingredients for the success that I've had with Elaine has been the quality of engagement. So in your world, where you're democratizing healthcare through a technology platform, how do you ensure the QA part of that engagement?
Yeah, so it's a bunch of thoughts. So one thought, I mean, the Uber for healthcare, you know, these days, the Uber for anything is, it's kind of, it's jumped the shark already. Like, you don't even, you actually don't, no, I use it too. You don't actually want to use it as much anymore, certainly when talking to investors, but to crowds of consumers, like it helps people understand. One of the reasons, or one of the parts where it actually breaks down for this domain, for Uber, you don't care who shows up in the car, right? It's just some guy and it's in 5 minutes and you got to ride somewhere. But in health, you absolutely care. And so one of the core tenets that we originally had was this idea that I know, and Elaine mentioned this, that it's a team-based approach. And a lot of that team-based communication between a nutritionist and an MD and let's say a naturopath, for example, and myself, it's already happening. I just want to make it a little easier and maybe a little less paper-based. And I would like to make it possible to bring other people to that in maybe outside of clinic or outside of one domain. So a lot of what is good about connecting with someone like Elaine, I think we will actually just make better. The goal is not to make those people faceless and to take away the relationship. There's some, I would say there's some people, and there's a trend in different healthcare apps to robot everything, right? It's the I was with a friend who I used to compete with in the book world in London recently, and he was telling me about this technology he just bought from Norway, and his investors in London are funding him, and it's like a robot doctor, right? It's like the bot. It's tell the difference if you can. I actually don't buy into that personally. I believe in the sort of the human network aided by technology, aided by wearables, aided by these communication tools. And ultimately, here's where the test is. What we've seen so far is when you've got health in your pocket, on your mobile phone, easily accessible with every other messaging app and other things that you do every day, your propensity to engage is higher. It's just because it's just there. It's easy. And whether it's booking an appointment or responding to a message or checking off part of my health action plan, we're making it easy. And so what we're actually seeing is we're driving up engagement. We're making engagement better by having the tool that we have. And I think we're just getting started. Like once the health action plan and the different data sources that I talk about get put into the app, I think engagement will go up still.
So I'm going to announce something shortly that will answer your question. We're going to make it happen for you. So you can do this in London, England when you retire. So thank you to the audience. I just want to say to those of you who have been here from the beginning of this chat, and some of us, my friends have joined over there. But before we do that, I just wanted to let you know that Mike, your league team is going to be offering some $50 vouchers, is that right?
Yeah, $50 for any service on League. So you can try it out, get a free massage.
And then certainly we're going to be providing all of you here with $100 off vouchers for telomere testing or a telomere performance program that we're going to be talking about in a minute. And oh yeah, I guess I should give them a book. Do you think I should give them a book?
Everyone should get a book.
Everyone
It's good
should get a
marketing.
book. Okay. Thank you. So here's a really important piece, and I know this is like the obligatory part, but it's really the most important part. So humor me, and then I see the food is coming, and please just go ahead and start setting that up. And then the oxidized juice is coming as well. People didn't catch that. I have to just start by saying that people ask me, why did you start this? And I'm going to call out somebody who doesn't like to be called out. And his name is Ken White. And he's sitting over there. And either I come to you or you stand up and say I need to just say thank you to you. And for those who don't know him, he is the authority in journalism. For the last 20 years, I think he set the bar in journalism in Canada because he was the founding editor of the National Post. And I got to meet him when he was the editor-in-chief and publisher of Maclean's magazine, and then he went on to become the president of Rogers Publishing. And for that, I thank him because he's caused me to start writing blogs for the various magazines and helped me along the way with self-help. Many people don't realize that the Symptom Profiler was first launched with Maclean's. It was a series of How Healthy Are You? So I owe you a debt. Now, what you don't understand is really this book started off as a fish story. So this is what happens. So I have to incentivize my clients to do things. So Ken started to come to my practice when one of his friends said, you need to go check this out and meet up with Elaine. And so one of the very important things is omega fatty acids. You keep hearing this because it's fish. And he said, I am not eating fish over your dead body. And so just park that. And then I would go up and ask him for advice and say, Ken, I really need to figure out how to screen that prevention is the best cure. And he looks at me and goes, you have to write a book. So it became, if you eat fish, I will write the book. And I'll tell you, he is now eating lots and lots of fish to the extent that I'm like, please eat some red meat. And for those of you who know, it's like, I need you to have your B12 and iron. So it is his and my bet, and for his health, I ended up on a 3-year journey writing a book. So thank you for that, Ken. Now the second part of it is that I wrote this book, and I have some people to thank, which is some of my editors, my personal editors, like Kelly Jones and Bob Ramsey, who helped me edit the book. And then when I finished editing it, I said, there's no way I'm going to send it to publisher because I'm not going to look like an ass, because I used to always give them the excuse that the best mark I ever got in English was a B+, and there's no bloody way I can write. So I decided that I would send it to Ken to read. So you have to understand how humbling that is. And he's a very busy man, and in 2 weeks I get this email from him, and he said, I'd like you to call me to talk about the book. It's the equivalent like a doctor sending an email going, I have some results, I'd like you to call me. So I call Ken, he goes, it's really well written. I really like it. You know what? That's the only book report card that I ever needed. And so then I sent it to Chris Lamont, and Michael Schellenberg was his book editor, and I go, don't mess with it. Ken said it was okay. Did I literally tell you that? I said, don't mess with it. So this is a work of love for Ken, and thank you, Ken, because without you prodding me, I would never have written this book. Never. So on that note, there is food available, but I'm going to just let everybody have something to eat, and because everybody's here, we have a prize for the pros. We also have some prizes for you, and so we're going to let you have something to eat, and then we're going to, I think, we'll just draw it all together. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to speaking to each and one of you, and thank you for hosting with me.
My pleasure.